different issues women should be aware of when they're thinking about running. And then also she's invited to join the incubator. It's a simple but proven and effective way to spark that interest, to plant the seed and to think, oh my goodness, my friend really thinks I can do this. And then I've got the community of a national organization behind me too to figure this out is really powerful. So that's one step. And then also if folks want to join our larger campaign to get 250,000 women running by 2030. Yes, that's 250,000 women running by 2030. That's in recognition of the over 500,000 positions in our country, and the fact that less than a third of them are represented by women. We set this big goal to create urgency, particularly because we're on the path right now that we will not see parity in our lifetime. For the listeners right now, we're not seeing progress fast enough. And if folks want to join that cause, they can sign up where they can. If they've served an elected office, they can become a mentor. If they have different types of expertise, whether it's, we've had women who are graphic designers, men who have campaign experience and they want to mentor. This is a place for women and men where if they want to offer up certain expertise, they can come and join our 250K by 2030 campaign too.
Terrific. I know that certainly have listeners who have particular skill sets that might be helpful to that. So I hope they will take you up on that and join that effort. Can you talk at all about if there are specific challenges for women with children? A lot of our listeners have young children at home, and I know that that's something that they think about when they consider running for office.
Yeah, I want to first just validate that is a fair question and absolutely worth considering. And just want to share a story of we heard from folks in our community where there's a group of women. Their school board was approaching this year, the election in 2017, and all of them were thinking like, gosh, one of us will have to win. We have all these very real, relevant concerns. We have to, at least, who's going to do it? And there was always a conversation, okay, well, I can't do it because of these obligations with the family. And it got to the point where none of the women ran and one of their husbands did. And I think that's just an example of kind of what are we doing to ourselves where there's a piece of where there's such pressure on mothers these days to be perfect. Lord knows we could have a whole nother podcast, right, on talking about the pressures around motherhood right now. Nonetheless, if you're a single mom. So I just want to say, A, the concerns are very real. I want to validate that. And B, just help us consider that there are more challenges. The time constraints are different for women with children as they're thinking about this path. But I want to encourage that, remember that running for office is absolutely a team sport and that no one should go at it alone. And if, there is a group of you where someone's saying, okay, someone needs to run for school board, well, maybe it's one woman is the candidate, but another woman is the one who's helping out and doing the taxing among all the different school activities, or someone else is helping out with the food and someone else is like, okay, I'm going to help you out with the political part. I think we just really all have to make sure we're coming together and supporting one another, or else it's going to keep being situations where the desire is there, but the demands and the pressure to always be perfect in motherhood prevents us. And I think it's incredible where we try to more and more show examples of women with children who are figuring this out. And like any mother, they just find a way. And particularly when we're thinking about how much getting involved in the local level is so important towards our children's futures, it's just determining what sacrifices are worth it for you and your family. And I think about how we did interviews with the current Secretary of State of Rhode Island, Nellie Gorbea, who she grew up in Puerto Rico and never thought she would be Secretary of State of Rhode Island, never in a million years. And she has daughters and was thinking about, she has car seats in her state vehicle. She has caps on the amount of different evening events she does. There's ways where she has built a team around her that is supportive of that. And I think that's what we need to do. And I know there are also organizations that are looking at how to make the actual elected bodies more friendly and welcoming towards mothers and working parents in general too. That structural change is really important as well.
That's really good to hear. I think that we talk a lot about how representation matters. And, there are sort of obvious ways of thinking about that, but I think the representation of mothers of young children is important and is going to be important moving forward in our political landscape. And so it's good that people are thinking about how can we make it friendly for mothers to be in office.
Absolutely. And we have to think about, there's work encouraging parties and the current elected officials to really expand and think about what changes need to be made if we truly want a representative government. There has to be an evolution.
Well, my sons are encouraging me to run for office, so
Oh,
I
okay,
don't
Kelly.
know that they
Okay.
realize how much time away from them that might mean, but in the abstract, they think it's a good idea.
Oh my goodness. Well, and I've heard of a lot of, we have what we call office hours with our incubator members, where current elected officials, former candidates will speak with our members, where they can just have a very candid, off the record conversation. And so many of the women have talked about how, I think of examples of where they've just been really deliberate about which events they bring their children to do to help get the sense of like this is what mom's doing and get a
Mhm.
sense of like this is the community she's serving and help found the right balance between like saying that this can be also part of your work, but then also like letting the kids just be kids and have a life too. And I think I just go back to that phase of finding a way and figuring it out like any parts of parenthood. And Kelly, just know, we'd love to have you in the incubator if you're
I may
thinking
just take
about
you up on that.
it.
So, that leads into another question I have. Obviously, bringing children along and showing them the political landscape is one way to demonstrate to them that women can be leaders. But what else can we do for our daughters to help encourage them to think of themselves as potential future candidates?
I was so happy that that this question comes up because it really has to start young, just like the STEM fields.
Hmm.
And so we actually partnered with Barbie to not only have create the first ever president vice president doll sets, because I think it's important where these mainstream toys reflect different possibilities, but also we created within the incubator a course for parents or anyone working with young girls, particularly in elementary and middle school years, on how they can start to encourage that elected office could be a real path for them. So there's exercises like helping girls, in the age appropriate ways of start to name how they're leaders. Are they leaders because they stand up for kids in the class? Or they stand up for different issues in their community or around school that they care about, whether it's recycling or um, I've heard from a lot of kids recess time dwindling, homework time. There are different pieces of just helping them learn how to name and identify themselves as leaders and what's their strengths and how have they started to practice standing up for issues and people they care about. We have different exercises in the incubator course where the girls can start to imagine what would it be like if they were mayor of their town, what would they do, what would they focus on. So it's all that piece of just helping them envision themselves as that elected leader in different age appropriate ways.
That's terrific. I'm remembering my own early social justice foray when I was in elementary school. I think it was probably around first grade. And every
Uh-huh.
day at lunch, we had two lunch tables for my class. And all the girls would sit at one table and all the boys would sit at the other table. And no one told us we had to do that. That's just what happened.
Hmm.
And I remember thinking this was terribly unjust and unfair. And so I started sitting at the boys' table and trying to lead a charge of the girls to also sit at the boys' table.
Yes, and I think it's those kind of things of just being able to encourage and talk about with your daughter on how that that's what being a leader's like and what felt great about that and what kind of felt scary about it. And let's talk about that. Those are all different exercises that we have in that course, where it can really start to plant the seed that they are absolutely, even as girls, powerful. They're powerful. They can help affect change in their daily lives. Yeah.
All right, so let's say I, Kelly, have decided I want to run for office in a couple of years. What's the first thing that I should do?
Mm. We recommend we start with in the incubator is a real focus on getting crystal clear on why you want to run.
Hmm.
And this is grounded, I think, traditionally you hear advice of like building your network, and of course we get there, or starting to develop your fundraising skills. Yep, we get there too. But why we start our incubator members on identifying their leadership vision is because think about the elected leaders or just any of the leaders we identify with most. It's because they have a vision.
Mhm.
For some of those leaders, we don't agree with the vision, but there's in cases of where the most effective candidates and elected officials are really able to articulate what's their vision for the community or for the constituency that they want to serve. And so we lead women through exercises on really helping to develop, get clear on articulating what their leadership vision is and how is that connected to their personal story. It's going to be the grounding point towards all the different decisions on what's your fundraising approach? What is your different networking approaches? What's the communities that you already know and who do you need to expand into to get to know? Those are all really based off of this, your current leadership vision, your personal story. And it also is, honestly, it puts the fire in your belly, right? It's the piece where running for office, I'm not going to lie, it's going to be challenging. There are going to be points where you walk through the fire, but there has to be something that's your leadership compass of driving you through. Why are you doing this?
Mhm.
What are the people or what are the issues that you want to really help serve? And if you don't have that really clear in the beginning, it's going to make other subsequent nuts and bolts decisions and choices more difficult. I just say it's a lot like for folks who maybe have started their own business or have worked in the start of a business. It's a lot where if the business doesn't have a clear vision, pretty tricky to make the later nuts and bolts business decisions. And so that's one thing I would just say is really like start to get to know how your personal narrative is connected to what you want to run and why you want to run. And then we have exercises on, okay, well, how do you start to assess your current network? How do you expand from there? What are your current qualifications? Really own them, like going through exercises of truly not underselling ourselves. Let's own our qualifications that we have. Let's, assess where there are some gaps and start to figure out how to fill those. And another important piece we really focus on is helping women understand how to start to develop a presence in their community, a communications presence, getting really used to being a little bit more in the public eye. We hear that as often as a deterrent is that women are pretty more comfortable with being in the behind the scenes piece, but we keep wanting to say that if every woman is behind the scenes, then we still have the same problem not having enough women to run. So getting used to really having that type of public presence, whether it's by getting involved in, let's say you're really concerned about school issues or economic development in your county, there are different ways like a public commission to apply for and start to get really used to having that type of presence and a more public leadership role. But it really comes down to getting very clear on that leadership vision connected to your personal story.
Yeah, I was really struck by that. So a few nights ago, I was at a local event, and a few candidates for local office were there introducing themselves. And the first woman was asked, "Why are you running for office?" And she told this story about how, the previous person was retiring, announced her retirement, and 17 people called me and said, "You should really run for office." And I was like, "Well, that doesn't really tell me anything about why I should vote for you just because these other people thought you should run." And the other woman who was there introducing herself when she was asked why she was running for office had a very compelling personal story. Her background was really interesting. She had issues that she was clearly passionate about, and it was a very, very striking difference between the two of them. And I was
Mm-hmm.
immediately much more drawn toward the second woman
Mm-hmm.
and wanting to vote for her,
Mm-hmm.
regardless of their actual qualifications. It just sort of, in
Right,
that moment,
right.
there was a certain chemistry, it's sort of making me feel like this was a person who would stand up for us and represent our interests.
That's right. There's a balance between being able to know how to communicate your qualifications or but it has to go deeper into that human connection. I think so much of it is what folks are yearning for from their elected officials is some type of, people use the word authenticity, but I think they're looking for like a genuine, real connection somehow. And you can do that by being able to know how to communicate and share your story in connection to the issues you care about and how that's going to affect the people you're asking to vote for you.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm sold. I'm ready to join the incubator. And
Woohoo! Success!
so
I've
I hope
earned my
that
keep for the day.
all of our listeners also plan to do so. I certainly know women who would be really fantastic in elected positions, and so I will encourage them to run as well. So thank you so much. If our listeners want to learn a little more before jumping in and joining the incubator, how can they learn a little bit more about She Should Run?
Sure. Well, just again, everyone is welcome. Either if you're thinking about running for office, even if it's just an inkling, you can go to shishrun.org and then under get involved, there's a link to be able to join our incubator. And if you're not quite convinced, you haven't drank the Kool-Aid yet, or you just know you want to support the women running, check out our 250K by 2030 campaign. There are different ways to be able to get involved and support.